Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Chavez. I am the host of Battle Ready. With Battle Ready, what we do is we help and show people ways to reinvent themselves during their times of stress, their times of challenges. And we want to bring on different individuals who have went through different phases of their life where they had ups and downs, how they handled it, what they did, and what can help you as the viewer maybe find a way to do something different that you love. Today we're going to have somebody that's on our show quite recently and is on quite a lot of times. And that's Dan Moran, the president and owner of GOAT Athletics in Texas. Hey Dan, how are you doing?
Good, Ricky.
I know we're almost done. You've been an amazing guest over the last couple of weeks. And we talk. It's funny. We have a lot of philosophies, right? And I have a military background, and you have a sports background. I mean, I play sports also, but I mean, you have that go get it attitude with sports, and then running a company, building a company, and both of us have had challenges in our lives where we didn't have as much, and we had to, move ourselves forward for ourselves, for our family. And one of the things I want to talk about today is leadership. Everybody talks about you need a good leader, you need this, that, and the other. But the truth is you should have a good leader without a doubt. But the leader shouldn't define you. I think leading somebody, you tell them what to do, you follow up, you coach them, and you work that way. But what I'm seeing nowadays is the biggest leadership challenge is leading yourself. Dan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. I think a good definition of leadership is you got to lead by example, right? And in leadership, unless you don't have any mentors and you don't have a good foundation, you're just like you're a ship running without a sail and a rudder. It's easy to lead people, but it's hard to be that that leader that's doing everything right and is traveling down that road to success.
What are some of the things that, and we're talking about individuals who've just been laid off, or individuals who've had some challenges, maybe they can't figure out whether or not, what's a good time for them to leave or do things to get themselves better. How does leadership and leading themselves in this situation really play in? Because I know that as a realtor, I have a real estate team, and I tell everybody, I help you any way I can, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. So if you say you can be at 9 o'clock and the alarm goes off at 8 and you hit the snooze and you're there at 9:15, old school, that's kind of a leadership challenge, right? So how do people get better?
Right. It comes down to self-responsibility, right? You have to take charge of your own life. And a lot of times, I would say people and employees that aren't entrepreneurs, they rely on somebody else to take them across the finish line, right? When you're the leader and you're the owner of a business, you're responsible. You're solely responsible for everything. So if I need to come in Saturday and unload a truck or do whatever, that's what it's going to take. But looking at individuals, they just need to take responsibility, look in the mirror, and ask if they're making it happen or not. Let's talk about real estate, Ricky. I know the only thing I know about real estate is I bought and sold houses. But if you're leading a team of salespeople and you have some great salespeople, it's situational leadership, right? You're going to take that person. All you're going to do is delegate some leads to them and maybe follow through, because they're your peak performer. They're your star athlete, right? They're the one. But let's say you got one on the other side that's not selling. Maybe they've sold 1 or 2 houses, right? And they need to pick that up and become better. First, I would look at that person and, are they making excuses? Because there's no excuses in life. You make it happen or you don't, right?
Right.
And that's the kind of person on the situational leadership. They're going to be the person that needs a little bit more. They're going to need the teaching, the training, the coaching, and the follow through. And so you really need to, I think as a leader and within companies, you need to look at, where you're at on that level. And even harder are individuals. They need to look at where they're at on the spectrum on the situational leadership side. Let's call it a 1 through 5. Are they a number 1 star employee, or are they a number 5 star employee? Because there's no bad employees. I think there's just bad people in the wrong position, or there's bad leadership. I don't think there's bad employees. So if they're a 1 star, they just need to, um, hopefully with their leadership, they need to reach out and talk to their leaders about what they need to become successful. And I think that's a fair question for employees today that they don't ask enough, is sit down with your boss, create an evaluation. If it's a 1 year evaluation process, tell your manager, tell your president, tell your leader that you want quarterly evaluations because you want to know how to get better.
So one of the things, I'm going to go back to the individual leadership and what we've been talking about. But from my point of view, I read an HR manual kind of years back. It was a newer company, and they probably had the smallest HR manual I've ever seen. And one of the things that I really gravitated to was that no employee can blame their leadership on failure. It's their responsibility to learn their job. It's their responsibility to continue their education. It's not about the leadership making them do it, and it's about them taking the initiative to do all the things. Look in the mirror. Hey, am I doing everything I'm supposed to do? And I know you just said something very, very close to that. And I think with us and going through these different steps, and you talked about real estate, everybody, there's a lot of realtors in Houston. I mean, I think there was in the 30,000 prior to COVID, and the 50s after. I know it's coming back down. Now people are figuring out that they really don't understand the process and how to be better. And the key in my mind was always, don't chase the money, take care of people. But you have to meet the people, find the people, talk to the people. That means getting up. That means going to visit people. That means getting involved in the community and things like that. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier. I mean, the ownership is on the individual, right? So that's the leadership challenge. How do you feel about that?
No, it's totally on the individual. You make it happen or you don't. In your case, what you're talking about is, I just call it FaceTime visits. I mean, how much are you out there? How many people are you seeing? If it's my sales or if it's your sales, Ricky, each touch accumulates to a sale or adds up to a sale. And
Sure.
basically, if I have
It's all math,
if I have
right?
1,000 touches, maybe that equals 100 orders. But if I only have 100 orders, does that equal 10? Or 100 touches, does that only equal 10 orders? So it comes down to frequency, doing the right thing, and kind of in the spin cycle, wash, rinse, repeat.
Exactly. And I think we talked about this earlier. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? And doing all the things you need to do. I remember you talking about knocking on doors and doors being closed in your face, and going to the next, coming back next week and doing it again. And I think one of the things we talked about was, no is nothing more than a request for more information. So if you provide all the information, just like you did with that first brand that you went to go see, and you put that big book of 29 pages of why you're going to take over the world and what your plan is. I mean, you had to sit down and do that and figure out how to do that. And somebody just didn't give it to you. You had to do your research and get in line with people. So what would what advice would you give to an individual, no matter what level? It's entry level, CEO level, all the same. Something's just changed in your life as far as, your work. What now?
Status quo, man. People need to get off the status quo. This world and life is dynamic, right? And you need to learn in life, whether it's in your personal or work life, you need to learn how to pivot. You need to learn how to pivot in life. You mentioned it, Ricky. You and I grew up, there was no internet, and now it's all internet, social media. If we don't pivot, we're in the Stone Ages, right? So I think it just comes down to, people looking themselves in the mirror, being able to assess who they are and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and make sure they're in the right position. And if you're transitioning, if you've been laid off or you lost a job, you know, it's going to sound simple, but write down your strengths on one side of a piece of paper, write down your weaknesses on the other, and figure out what you like to do, and then look for the industry that best matches your strengths. And then, as always, work on your weaknesses.
So
And if I can say this, Ricky, for anybody listening out there, if you want to be successful, I got two easy reads for you, right? First, I want you to read Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. And this was the 90s ascent on Everest that took lives. And it talks about internal fortitude and what makes people tick, and if you're going to make it happen or not. So that's the first book I'd recommend reading. And if you're going into business, the second book I would read, easy read, I would read Good to Great. And if you could read those two books, you're going to be well on your way to success, depending on what you take out of those books, because they're great reads.
Well, Dan, I appreciate you sharing those books. And, I know we've had many, many conversations throughout the years of our friendship. I want to go back again. It's one of the things that you said when you brought up, doing the right thing, look in the mirror, and doing the pros and cons, or your goods and your bads. I want to emphasize, and I know you did, but emphasize you have to be honest with yourself. Because the reality is, if you're not honest with yourself, you can't fix anything. I think that's real important. I know when I sit down and evaluate or go through a one-on-one with my team, I have a bunch of lists of KPIs that I'm hoping that they achieve or focus on, but I don't grade them. Well, I give them one, it's an A, B, C, or D. A is great, B is okay, C is some challenges, and D is just doo-doo. And when they grade themselves, I just ask them, okay, why do you feel this is what it is? And we talk through it, and sometimes they make some adjustments, sometimes they don't. But the truth is, if you don't believe it, you won't change it. So honesty is the biggest thing, right?
Right. I think also what's important there, Ricky, is it's not only the employee's evaluation, but if you've ever had a reverse evaluation, have your employees rate you and how you're doing.
That's perfect. That's a great idea.
And you know what? You know what? Any manager that doesn't want to do that is afraid they're going to learn the truth, and they already know the truth. And people can evaluate me any day of the week, and I think it's all going to come back the same. And if it doesn't, it's an opportunity to grow, right? And to be better and figure out how you can be better, and not better only for the organization, but for yourself.
Well, Dan, that's a great way to end the program. I definitely agree with. I know we've had some conversations, especially when we did real estate, and you had some questions and how to reevaluate some of the situations. And I told you that all that does is make me better. And you have to look at it that way, and you can't take it personal. So again, Dan Moran, GOAT Athletics in Tomball, Texas. We appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. And we're getting ready to end this segment. And we appreciate you coming to Now Media and sitting down with us. Everybody else, it's been great talking to you. We'll see you next week.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.